Hi, this is Acceptable Madness, episode 3. We're going to be talking about relaxing. My name is Scott McKinney, and I'm going to be talking about what kind of stuff's worked for me in the past, what stuff I'm going to be trying in the future, what hasn't worked, and anything relating to that. I wish you guys could hear the amount of times that I start and restart and delete and everything for the intro of this podcast. It's just so weird. I still just feel like this random guy creating a podcast, which is exactly what I am. And it's really hard to get past that kind of mentality for it all. But basically what I do is once I have an intro that I'm actually comfortable with, I just let the recording keep going, and then I just talk, and whatever shit spews out of my mouth is the shit that ends up on this podcast. So I don't know. I'm hoping it's not just incoherent rambling, and I'm hoping that it's actually something worth listening to. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. Glad to have you. If you're a repeat guest, if you listen to the first two, then thanks for coming back. I'm glad that you like what I'm doing. So, but we'll dive right into it. Like I said, the topic of this is going to be relaxing and what I found that works and what I found that doesn't. So I guess we'll start with some of the things that I do that currently work for me to relax. So the reason that I wanted to bring this one up is because I've actually been having a really hard time relaxing recently. I have this inferiority thing where, just like whenever I start these podcasts, I feel like I have no merit to talk about them. But it's what I like to do, so that's why I kind of keep pushing through with it. But I like to write. I like to create videos. I'm working to create businesses. I like just developing anything that I can. Card games in the future. I'd like to make a video game. And when I say make, I mean create the story. I have no skill and no talent in programming. I tried to be a computer engineer for a whole year, and I ended up graduating with marketing, so you all know how well that went. But it allows me to talk to my friends and tell them that I was an engineer for a full year, which I know full well is total bullshit. But whenever you're telling it to someone that went to school for engineering and completed the entire 4-year degree, I don't know. I just think it's funny. I think it's because I'm trying to, minimize what they've done, although what they've done is impressive. And it's not important. But basically, like I said, relaxing is the focus. And the reason I've been having such a hard time is because of this inferiority thing that I have. So, I always feel like I need to be doing something because I need to legitimize the work that I've been doing. So the ways that I relax is by actually focusing on these passion projects that I work on. And right now I have books, games, businesses, all these kinds of things being worked on. And it's because I find solace in sitting back with a cup of coffee in front of my computer for hours and developing a new project or working to push forward a project that I have. So for my book, it's called Drawn to Madness, but I won't go into any of the details about it right now. But basically, I'm in the process of trying to get that in front of agents and seeing if I can get some sort of representation to get it published in a more in the traditional publishing route. And then if that doesn't work, I'll put it up on an ebook site somewhere like Amazon or whatnot. And then I'll do the same thing. I have a book of, I write all these shorts, and I don't know what else to call them, but they're just really short pieces, and I put them up on my blog. It's titled the same thing as this podcast, Acceptable Madness. And they're just really short, condensed thoughts that I have. So some of them are very dark, and some of them are very existential. If you're not a big fan of dark things, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, if you struggle with your own negative thoughts, then it might be worth the reason that I decided to make them public, and the same reason that I'm doing this podcast, is knowing that someone else is struggling with the same stuff that you're going through. It can be helpful because you know that you're not alone. So I don't know, but this is not a shameless plug for my blog or whatever else I'm doing. It's just what I do to relax. I like to create things. I find that to be one of the more cathartic things that I can do. So if I sit down with a pen and paper or sit down in front of my computer and I have an hour of free time, I can just sit there and I can write whatever I want, or I can develop a new card game and try to get it kickstarted, or And those are all things that are going to be farther down the line. They're not things that I've really pursued. I'm in the process of pursuing all of them, but the act of creating stuff is very relaxing for me. And I've come a long way from the past couple of years. So I want to jump back and think about what used to make me happy whenever I tried to relax. So I guess I'll start. The topic of this is depression. So I'll start with how I feel now and where I've come from. So right now, my depression is a lot less suicide-y than it used to be. So I used to have a tremendous amount of suicidal thoughts. I would say definitely every day. Any little thing that I found unpleasant was, it definitely eventually transpired into a suicidal thought. And I think part of the problem with that was, or why that kept happening and why it was just this nonstop trend was I was not happy with anything that I was really doing. So I went to school for marketing, and I worked at this one place who I won't name, but the work that I did there was the most mundane and boring shit you'll ever hear about ever. So I sat there and I did nonstop research at this internship, and they sold really highly technical products. And the actual marketing staff there was run by engineers that had never done any amount of marketing, or at least it seemed like they had never done any marketing in the past. And they were being tasked with creating an entirely new marketing plan for the entire business. And they brought in a marketing consultant, and they brought in these people to help, myself included. I was supposed to be a pupil for what they were trying to create and work on. And it was the worst thing ever. The guys that I worked under, they had no knowledge of the product, is what it seemed like. The company, I would not be surprised if in the future the company just went under just because of how poorly it was being managed and this marketing plan was being developed. But what I did was the problem. So working at a job that you don't like, that's going to happen, and that's something that's really unpleasant, and it sucks that it's basically just a fact of life, is you're going to work for jobs that you hate and bosses that suck and everything else. But the problem with it was whenever I would come home, I would immediately jump onto the Xbox, and I would play video games for hours on end. So I'd come home from work, I'd be miserable. I just spent 8 or 9 hours doing a job that I have no interest in and I thought is the absolute worst shit in the world. And I would come home, turn on Xbox, and I would play some Rainbow Six Siege was the game that I was playing a lot whenever I ended up stopping video games basically entirely, but I'll get to that soon. But I would play it for 4 or 5 hours basically every night. So I get home at like 5:30. I'd play it until like 10:30. I'd have a break in there for dinner. I was living with my parents and stuff, so I would have dinner. I'd talk to them a little bit, but I was absolutely miserable. And the longer that I went with this internship, I would stay up later and later, because the thought process, and it wasn't sensible, but it was the thought process that I had was, if I go to bed later, then, or basically, I don't want to have to wait. I don't want to go to bed because I don't want to wake up. So I would go to bed as late as I possibly could until my body would just basically give up on itself, and I'd be getting like 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and then I'd go in, work this job that I hated, and I'd be basically trying not to fall asleep at my desk, but it didn't matter because I wasn't doing work anyway. Like the amount of work that I was given, I could do it in 2 hours out of a 40-hour week. But so what I would do is I would go into work and I'd be exhausted, and then I'd come home and I wouldn't have the energy to do anything. And I would just come back and I'd play video games, and I talk to my friends, and I value all the friendships, and I have a lot of friends that I do appreciate. A lot of which, even though I don't really play that many even though I don't play many video games anymore, I still keep in touch with all the friends that I did play a lot of video games with. But I just hit a point where I was super, super, super unhappy with everything that was going on. And during the semester beforehand, so this is my junior year, I was trying to get another internship to avoid having the same internship as the summer before. And I couldn't get one. I just couldn't find one. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. That's all. just in the past. But I ended up working at the same place again. I knew I would be miserable. I knew I would hate it. And I knew going into it that I was going to be miserable. Like I had that thought process walking in was, this is going to be absolutely awful. I'm going to hate it. It's going to be the same thing as last year. And it was. But what I did outside of work was a bit more productive and made me a lot happier. And what I did was, instead of waiting until 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, I would go to bed at like 10 or 10:30. And I would wake up at 7, get to work by 8. And then I would work, and I would hate my job, and I would sit there and I'd be absolutely miserable. But when I came home, I would have some more energy to do whatever I wanted. And I'd figured out that during my 6th semester, I found out that I liked writing a lot. And I actually I wrote like the first few pages of a book that I titled Acceptable Casualties. So again, this blog is just a play on Acceptable Casualties and Drawn to Madness. So the 2 books that I've written have kind of come together into one. I don't know. It's not a portmanteau because it's 2 separate words, but it doesn't matter. But what I did after work is, instead of coming home and just being miserable and exhausted, I would have some energy. And what I did was I sat down in front of my laptop and I typed, and I never knew I was going to finish a book. The end goal, I guess, was to finish the book, but I didn't think I was going to follow through with it. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I could write a book, and then I sit down to try writing a book, and then you never make any progress on it. But then after about a month, I wrote a whole book, and I did the bulk of it in about 2 weeks. So my writing process is start it, and then like I'll do the first 10 pages, and then in 6 months I'll get some weird boost of energy, and I will finish it in about 2 or 3 weeks. And that's actually happened with both of my books. But writing for me is a really relaxing thing to do. I think it's really good to get those emotions out, things that I'm not typically very good at expressing, especially whenever I started writing. I was really bad at it. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I would never talk to I was really bad at maintaining relationships. Whenever the going got tough, my thought process was to kind of just abandon what was happening. So like, if I had a friendship and I did something that I thought was like unbelievably stupid or asshole-ish or just some dumb shit, my first thought is, I'm just going to stop talking to this person. So that kind of shows where I started in terms of my ability to deal with emotion. But whenever I found that I liked writing, and it was a really good use of my creative outlet, it was a really good creative outlet. It was a really good use of my creativity, and a way to just kind of get my mind off of the stuff that I hated, which at that time was my job. And it made me a lot happier. And I basically haven't played video games since. I'll play here and there. Like I'm currently playing through Pokemon on the 3DS. I got it as a gift from my girlfriend back in July, and I started playing it in October. So that should show how many video games I've been playing recently. But it's not like I have anything against video games. I still think that they're a really good outlet if you can find a way to relax with them. But I just haven't had a very easy time relaxing. But yeah, that basically what I'm saying is that the start of me figuring out how to relax is kind of also me finding that an emotional outlet, or creative outlet, whatever you want to call it. It's both, so it doesn't matter. But it's super interesting to see where I started and where I've come from. So the outlet was, and it wasn't a good outlet for me personally, but I would play video games, and that was it. And now it's like, I will come home from work and I'll work on a business plan for something that I have working or going for me, or I'll make a new card game, or I'll find someone, or I'll work hard to like submit to agents, or I'll write something new, or I'll update my blog. And I relax by turning into a workaholic, while also the TV show of choice that I'm watching right now is Workaholics, and it's absolutely hilarious. So those are the ways that I've been relaxing recently. And obviously there are some other things intertwined in there also. So spending time with friends and family. I don't live very far from most of my immediate family, so I spend a lot of time with them whenever I can. But it's just the way that I relax. It's not, whenever I come home from work, if I just sit there and I watch TV for 4 hours, I feel wildly I feel absolutely terrible. And it's because I feel like I just wasted all that time. I feel like I could have been doing something more productive. And yes, I could have, but it's also, I don't meditate, I don't do yoga, I don't do any of that stuff. Although I have nothing against it, it's just not something I've done yet. I find it very relaxing to just come back, put on headphones, put on a nice, doesn't matter what kind of music, but some nice song that you're a big fan of, and just listen to it, close your eyes a little bit, and just think, or find a way to actually use those terrible emotions or those thoughts that you've had throughout the day and put them up on paper or create something. Develop a video game, develop an app, develop a blog, anything. No one has to read it. No one has to use the product that you make. I know a lot of people are very insecure about that. I don't like to sing in front of anybody, and it's not even because I have the worst voice in the world, although I think I do. And this is coming from the guy who's writing, or not writing, but recording a podcast and still thinks that he is the most pretentious voice in the universe. But I don't care if anybody listens to it. It's just something that's an outlet for me, so I can come back. And I have a job that I don't hate right now, but there are other things that I'd rather be doing. I'm more passionate about my writing, and I'm more passionate about, honestly, even this podcast. Even though I have the hardest time getting it started, just because I don't know what to say, and I know that what I'm saying is just, I don't know. It feels like there's no legitimacy, but it doesn't matter. I guess the legitimacy is in finding something to talk about or a way to talk about it, so whatever. But basically, it's just, I don't know. The way that I found to relax, it doesn't necessarily have to be coming back. Like, if you're an introvert, it doesn't have to be coming back and reading a book. And if you're an extrovert, it doesn't have to be going out to the bar with your friends. Both of those things may be relaxing to whoever's out there. Like, someone might love that. That might be the way that they relax, and that's great. All that matters is that at the end of the day, their mental health is kind of in check, and they're not in a bad position or a mental slump or something like that. It's just more of they need to find something that makes them happy. So for me, depending on the day, it might be coming back and reading a book, or it might be coming back and typing something because I've had a particularly bad day or a particularly bad thought went through my head, or something. But I find that finding something to relax with or relax to, whether it's like music or writing or reading or anything, I find that to be one of the most helpful things in the universe, especially for someone that has depressed or suicidal thoughts or anxiety that just feels like it's ripping them apart. It's just, if you can find a way to take a step back and really try to just think about relaxing, or just not think at all. And I know that is impossible. I've tried it many a times and it's never been successful, but trying to not think is better than just letting those thoughts transpire. And I think that's one of the most important things in terms of finding a good solution for mental health. I think it's really important to find a way to use all of those negative emotions in either something productive, or finding a way to really cope with them. And some people, it might be talking to others. And I think that's the case in most cases, even if that's something that you haven't tried yourself, whether it's through therapy or a really a confidant or something like that. But I can't stress enough how important it is to relax. And for me, because all I can do is talk about my own personal experience, it's been writing stuff that hopefully someone finds and it'll make them feel better, creating a podcast, writing a book, or doing something that I think might eventually have some sort of positive impact on others, and being creative at the same time. I find those to be the ways that I relax. So even if I'm up from 8 o'clock and I work till 5, and then I'm up till midnight that night, working on some project for something, that's more relaxing to me than coming back and watching TV for 5 hours and then falling asleep on my couch and then waking up to do it all over again the next day. just find something that you can relax with. Again, all I can do is speak from my own experience. It may not be the same stuff for you, but you need to try as hard as you can to find what will work for you, because that's going to be what takes you through the next day, is if you can find something that actually matters to you. It doesn't have to be your job. It doesn't have to be a creative project. It can be TV. It can be video games. But just make sure that whatever you figure out is going to work for you works for you. And if your interests change, let that relaxing thing change also. If it starts at video games and ends at writing, great. Just really embrace the fact that writing is going to take a lot of time and precedence and a lot of emotional effort and whatever else. So just find something that helps you sleep better at night. And I promise that you will start to feel better, at least incrementally. Like even if only a little bit, you'll start to feel better, and it's worth it. I promise it's worth it. Thanks.